If we look back in the evolution of humanity, we can go back 2.5 million years with stone tool manufacture. And if we look at the history of all of that, about 99% of the time, all we have is stone tools to study as archaeologists. Because metal didn't come in till fairly recently, pottery is fairly recent, and other organic materials don't preserve. So we end up with a huge amount of human history is expressed only by stone objects. So the more we can learn about how people made and used their stone tools, the better insights we'll have into the past. So I'm going to show the techniques and some of the principles, and then move on into making some finished tools so you can see that it's predictable and controllable, and I can produce what I want unless I make a mistake. And a mistake will often happen. Those are the basic principles of how the stone breaks. And this is, as I said, was a piece of sandstone with a lot of silica in it. But other stones, flints, even quartz, will break the same way. And so here's an example. This kind of quartz was used quite extensively in different parts of the world to make stone tools. It's not as easy to control the breaking as it is with the sandstone, but it does work the same way. So it's simply a matter of striking it with a hammerstone, and you can see that's more irregular. But many people around the world use these for their stone tools, this kind of material. So you can see these little fragments can be used. They have little sharp edges. Usually with quartz we don't see very complicated tools, simple tools. We also have silica material that's called, this would be called chert or flint, and this is formed in a limestone, and it doesn't form everywhere, but where you do find it like this, it was one of the favored materials, but it breaks the same way. So I can take this hammerstone and strike this edge of the flint and expect to take this sort of a big thick piece off the corner here. This. Okay. And you can see it's very smooth. This also has an extremely sharp edge, but it's much smoother and more glass-like than the sandstone was, or the quartz. So this was a favored material here in southeastern Brazil, was a favored material. And many tools and artifacts were made from this stone. Basically, what we have is we have a piece of stone. In this case, it's a sandstone that has a lot of silica in it, and so it makes it more glassy than a lot of other kinds of sandstone. And in order to produce something useful, I have to strike the stone, apply energy, and enough energy so that it actually makes a crack in the stone, and then a piece will come off. Now that piece that is removed we call a flake. And so the flake will have sharp edges and will be a tool all by itself, or it can be shaped into something else, and I'll show that process. If I strike the surface of the stone very hard with another stone, it transfers energy, and the energy is transferred into the stone in the shape of a cone. I strike here, the energy will go in the shape of a cone in waves. So to make a flake with a sharp edge, what I have to do instead of hitting it back here is I'll hit it near this edge where two faces come together, and it's absolutely critical that the angle between these two faces is less than 90 degrees. So this is just a little less than 90 degrees here. So I will choose to strike near the edge here, and that will allow a piece to come off, a flake to be removed. Now it's also important what angle I apply the energy. So if I hit it this way, nothing will happen. The cone will form, but there won't be any flake that comes off. So the angle that I strike also has to be less than 90 degrees to the surface in relation to the front. So what I can do then is I can just strike the stone at a glancing blow like this and follow that energy through, and a piece will come off. Now the shape of the piece is also something I can control. So the piece that comes off can be large and fat, thick like this one, or it can be long and narrow and sharp like this one. And that all depends on how I strike, where I strike, and what the surface looks like. And what will happen is that energy will follow those ridges, and it'll give me a narrow piece. I make a blade. You can see it's long and relatively narrow, and it followed these ridges. Now that blade is incredibly sharp on the edges. It has very, very sharp edges that are good for cutting and lots of different kinds of tools. But if I want a big wide piece, what I will do is I'll strike along a flat face where the ridges are very shallow. And then the energy will expand like in a cone, and it'll take off a wide flake. This kind of quartz is something that's fairly common around the world, and it was used by a lot of people, sometimes because they didn't have anything better. But sometimes I think it was because they preferred it for the color, the texture, the look of it. Not because it made a better tool, because it made something special. And one of the things we find in North America is one of our very earliest cultures called Clovis. They went out of their way to find quartz crystal to make points out of, even though they had much better material. And we find quartz crystal points in Clovis almost everywhere we find Clovis, even though there's no quartz locally. And so I think they had some very special purpose for that. And I mean, even now people think of quartz crystals as kind of magic stone. You know, it's very special, or it has powers or whatever, especially crystals. But you get a piece like this. I mean, there's not much in nature other than ice that looks like that. Quartz crystal is very fragile, very, very brittle. I would like to try one this way, but I don't have a platform, a place that's got the angle that I need. So I'm going to have to produce an angle. By removing that. And then if I take a couple more like this, now what I've done is I've made a place here that it's at the proper angle to strike this way. That's got possibilities, but it's not as even and clear as I was hoping it would be.